I'm joined by Dr Azar Jammine. He's a chief economist at Econometrix. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon. You've been quoted as saying you wonder if the lockdown was worth the effort, as significant parts of the economy have been damaged. What then would you hope for from that NEDLAC recovery plan and the President's speech tonight?
The first thing I would hope for from the President's speech, and it has been mooted generally, is a move to lockdown level 1. And one of the very important elements of that would be to unban international travel into and out of this country. I know that there will still be certain restrictions, but the increased air traffic will certainly come as a very welcome support for aviation and hospitality and allied industries in South Africa, and through that provide a further boost to the general economy. We have noticed that with every lifting of lockdown restrictions, moving from level 5 to level 4 and onto level 3 and onto level 2, with every one of those, we've seen an improvement in economic activity, and I believe that we will get an additional slight stimulus to the economy from moving to level 1, especially the rescue that this will have on hospitality and aviation. Mm-hmm. But there are other structural factors that can be implemented to provide room for recovery. Some of them have already been in plan for some time now. The one is a big infrastructure investment plan. 51 projects have been identified, and here the government is aiming to work together with the private sector. And there is an intention to try and fund some of these projects through specifically directed bonds at each project, as opposed to taking a whole portion of pension fund assets and forcing pension funds to invest in infrastructure. Here it's a case of enticing them to invest in particular projects by trying to persuade them and offering a vision of making a very good return on each of these projects. Mm-hmm. The third element that is going to be, can provide a lot of room for recovery is working on improving electricity security. And in this regard, a lot of companies are in a position to actually generate their own electricity from their own operations. A lot of rubbish that they and wastage that they create during their own manufacturing or other operations, mining operations, can be recycled into actually generating their own electricity. Until recently, they've not been allowed to largely do that, because that has been, Eskom has not allowed that. And one hopes that licenses will be given from now on to allow them to start generating their own electricity. And this will go some way towards also not only creating more jobs and energy security for themselves, but also alleviating the electricity shortage throughout the country itself. The big skepticism will remain as to why now? Why is this all being thought about now, when in fact many of these initiatives should have been considered long time ago, and in the interim the South African economy has been sliding all the way. And the fourth big element that needs to be considered is, of course, the need to fight corruption and state capture. In this regard, one is encouraged by some of the moves of President Ramaphosa in recent times, and one can only hope that this will help towards saving a lot of resources that would otherwise have been wasted away in certain connected people's pockets.
Mm. Dr. Jammine, when you speak about that distrust of government, that is something that has been a recurring narrative, especially when it comes to procurement and the like, and the corruption being highlighted, especially during lockdown. How then does government need to earn trust and show that they are capable of actually working on the challenges that they are? And then what role does the private sector have to play? I know you've touched on some elements in terms of helping grow our economy going forward.
Well, this is where, of course, there's going to be a lot of skepticism as to whether the proof will be in the pudding. And in this regard, the government faces one huge challenge, and that is in terms of the factional divide that exists within the ruling party. One has been encouraged more recently to believe that the faction that wants to actually fight state capture and corruption has been gaining ground in that regard under President Ramaphosa's leadership. Then pulling the private sector in, one has to ensure that the private sector itself doesn't see this as an opportunity to make a big profit for themselves, but rather the only way in which this can succeed is for both sides to actually work together for the improvement of the country's economy as a whole, and not for their own personal and specialized needs and profits and benefits.
Dr. Azar Jammine, the Chief Economist at Econometrix, thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon.
It's a pleasure.